Whew, finale time. Studio Series 86 Constructicon Scavenger is the final member of this set, and my god, it is very satisfying to finally have them all. Cause yeah, despite the many shortcomings these figures have had, it is still immensely satisfying to have them all together, and of course finally complete Devastator. Stick around to the second half of the video for that. But even with how gratifying all that is, does the individual Scavenger figure, and while we're at it, the rest of the set justify that fairly hefty price tag, Jesus? Well, let's take a look at them and find out. And as much as I hate to say it, despite him being one of my favorite designs among the Constructicons, the sculpted detail and proportions on Scavenger leave a little bit to be desired. Now I will say this is probably the most consistently proportionate figure of the entire set. Every single other Constructicon had some kind of issue that was kind of messing with the silhouette. Hook and Mixmaster's low elbows, Scrapper's really long arms, Longhaul's girth, Bonecrush's everything. There was always some kind of issue, but this guy, very consistent. I'll give him that. The legs are kind of squat and wide, the chest is kind of squat and wide, the arms are squat and wide, and the head's just pretty much there. He does have a little bit of the Combinables Optimus Prime syndrome, but it's not egregious. Puffy could be a word you'd use to describe this guy, and I don't think you'd be far off, but at the very least, he is consistently puffy. And you know what? In renders, I didn't think it looked great, but in hand, I'm kind of into it. The proportions don't really bug me. However, I do take a little bit of issue with the surface detailing. I just find that a lot of the greebling on this guy feels a little bit aimless. I find the tread legs look a little bit bland and ill-defined, at least from the front. The sides are nice. The crotch and that chest panel probably have the best sculpting across this guy, but I do think that might be the way that the silver paint is catching the light. Although those little asymmetrical details in the pecs are kinda nice, I'm into it. But the arms are the real letdown here. They're just kind of covered in various little boxes and squares, which are way too shallow and ill-defined. It makes the arms look completely detailless in my books. And that's not accounting for the vast swaths of hollowness across the inside of the arms. I mean, are you kidding me? That's horrendous. Not only does it look god-awful, but it also feels cheap. The sections on the torso that house the arm joints are, like, soft and squishy. I don't like it. There's some hollowness in this set that I can kind of understand or get behind, but this is the worst instance of it. Real shame. That DNA kit couldn't come any sooner. But at the very least, their heads continue to be a standout in this set. I love Scavenger's head design so much. And color-wise, yeah, he's just the same as the others, what do you expect? Nice pale neon green, deep purple, silver paint on the chest and head is really nicely applied, although I do wish a little bit of that red paint was applied into the chest greebles. But there is one weird piece of deco on this guy that has me a little bit concerned. For some reason, the fists are cast in purple and painted green, which does cause some issues in the transformation because that extra layer of paint, the tolerances are a little bit off, so they're very tight to move in and out. And you don't really have a nook to pull it out by, so you have to worry about chipping the paint with your fingernails, and it's far from pleasant. Look, I'm gonna be honest, just thanks to the proportions and my enjoyment of this design, I don't hate the way that this guy looks, but he does have some problems. However, I wouldn't say he's one of the worst looking members of this set. It's just those hollow arms, man. I just think they're inexcusable. However, he does have a leg up in the playability. Accessory-wise, he comes with a blaster that is easily my favorite of all the Constructicons. It's really well filled out, and that scope and side mag combo really reminds me of a Stormtrooper blaster. And I really like how it looks in his hand. And of course, there is also the bucket arm, which came separately out of the box. Gets a lot more play in the alt mode, but you could use it like a big scorpion tail if you really wanted to. Yeah, the accessories, especially the blaster, really ain't bad. And honestly, he poses better than most of the figures in this set. The head is on a mushroom peg and a hinge, so he can only look side to side and down, which is a little bit annoying, but not too bad. The shoulders are on pretty unrestricted ball joints that give him a lot of wiggle room, including kind of a faux butterfly joint. The elbows are on decent ball joints. There's nothing at the wrist or the waist, but that's nothing new for this set. The hips are on pretty good ball joints that give him a nice range of motion. There's thigh swivels, standard knees, and there are ankle pivots that feel slightly detented, but they're a lot less restricted than Bonecrush's were. Now, as much as I do wish there were a few more universal joints across this guy, I've kind of come to warm up to the idea of all the ball joints. I mean, the shoulders in particular gain a little bit of range, and they're all nice and solid, except for maybe the elbows they could do with being a little bit tighter, but they aren't annoyingly loose, it's fine. I think one of the main benefits from the ball joints being used in the deluxe class figures in this set is that not only does it reduce the parts count, but it slightly reduces the weight, which means there is a lot less weight on Devastator's upper half, which is very important for balancing him out. It is a very minor thing, but I do believe it may have been a factor here. But either way, it does mean that Scavenger is one of the more dynamic members of this set. Of course, lacking a waist and wrists is nothing new here, and it is still a bit annoying, but he is still fun to pose. And I do have to mention that having all of the Constructicons in the same place is such a sight to behold. Once you get the sixth man in the squad, they really come together as a whole. Not quite like that. Well, not yet. We gotta hit the alt mode first. The transformation on this guy is a little bit of a mixed bag in my books. There are a lot of very fun steps here. I like the fact that you kind of have to move the legs out of the way to get some of the parts in before you can shift them back into place. And it is really simple, but I have to bring it back to that hollowness in the arms. They make the plastic really malleable, and it means that the arms are kind of hard to get tabbed in, because they just want to squish around in your hands instead of actually going into the tabs. It's frustrating and kind of unsatisfying in hand. But once you get it done, I gotta say, this is a fun little excavator mode. The actual design of this thing and how well it clumps together and compresses down is just really nice. I really like the little cabin. A lot of the best sculpting across this guy, like those little bits in the pecs and the sides of the legs, are on full display here. And of course you can use the arm with 3 hinge joints and a swivel where it connects to the 5mm port. Also you can remove it. That doesn't look right. Get that back on there. The only things that I could really critique about this guy is that you can't spin the excavator, there's a little gap at the top here, and there's no wheels, so we can't roll. But at the very least, there is weapon storage. Yay! Look, I'm not going to recommend this thing individually. I really wouldn't with any of these guys. There's so many little limitations and faults in this set, especially with the 2 deluxes. But if you plan on going in on all 6, you do get one very big thing that I think makes this set 100% worth it. And since you've seen most of this process in the other reviews I've done on this set, I'll let the royalty-free Jazz take the wheel on this one. You want to make sure that you connect long haul pretty firmly, so there's no wobble at the waist. Make sure you flip out this purple peg, it's the most solid connection in the chest. And please, for the love of God, plug the back tread into Longhaul's armor, it's going to end up far from solid. And make sure the accessories are tapped on nice and securely. That chest plate adds a lot of extra stability. And following on from that very fun and satisfying conversion, the fully combined Studio Series 86 Devastator is really a sight to behold. Like, there is so much going on with this thing, and I love just about every part of it. All of the sculpted detail from the individual figures comes together to make just a very, very nice looking piece. There's these occasional moments across the combiner where it breaks out into really intricate sculpting, like the insides of the thighs or some parts on the shoulders. But other than that, it's a pretty clean aesthetic. Proportionately, he's incredibly consistent, he's the same colours all the way across, but there's different vehicle parts across different sections of him. It's always been a great look, and it's executed fantastically here. And the actual proportions themselves are really good. In a lot of the early photos, it looked like the shoulders would be way too broad and the legs would be way too short, but it evens out really nicely in person. It's just a really visually nice combiner. There's only a couple of little problems that I have with the look of it. There's that little square gap on hook just above the chest plate that's a little unsightly. Of course, the offset knees, while functionally justified, are a little ugly. And the big one that a lot of people were concerned about going into this guy, the backpack. Yes, it's a big chunk that sticks out pretty far, and it hangs pretty low, but I actually don't mind it at all, because it makes the torso feel even more solid, and it gives you a nice big chunk to hold this thing with when you're handling it. And trust me, you're gonna want to handle this thing. It is so solid. This is a really hefty combiner made of 7 components total, and yet it feels significantly more solid than some Commanders or Titans. Feels more solid than Siege Jetfire or Star Convoy. And all of that is accomplished without a full skeleton frame, and with this much posability. Like sure, the head can only swivel and the elbows are a little bit limited, but everything else in all of the limbs is just extremely smooth. And you at the very least get standard ranges out of all of it. And every single one of them is solid enough to support limbs the weight of a whole figure. Although that does bring up one of the concerns I have about the stability of this guy. The ankles, hips, and knees are the only ratchet joints across him. I still think the shoulders really needed it, but it doesn't make him feel any less solid in poses or satisfying when you're moving him around. Even some of the stability concerns that I did have before, like Scrapper's foot coming undone, they're a lot less of a factor when you have the whole thing together and it's balanced out properly. The only thing that I really have a problem with in this combine mode is just the fact that the blaster doesn't stay in his hand too well. And that's the result of mismolding on the blaster, not the figure. There's even enough specialized and regular ports across this guy to store every single one of the Constructicons accessories. This combine mode is just pure unfiltered quality. Oh. Devastator. I just realized that I'm wearing the exact same hoodie that I wore when I reviewed Star Convoy. I promise this has been washed. I love this. I really love this thing in combine mode. This is just a really good time altogether. The individual Constructicons aren't great. Each and every one of them suffers from this little group of issues. That being the lack of waist articulation, the hollowness, and less so with this one, the proportional inconsistencies. They do have a degree of fun factor. Most of them do. Some of them are harder to enjoy than others. I think Scavenger is one of the more enjoyable ones in the set. Although I would still say that each and every one of them is kind of pushing it for being worth the asking price of an individual figure. But slap them all together, you get the main gestalt, and it feels worth the price. 30, 60, 150, 170, 190. It's round up to 200-ish, just to account for the extra 3 that they keep slapping on the end of the numbers on these things. 200, 205 quid for 6 fine robots and 1 extremely good combiner that is bigger than most of the other ones. And I do genuinely think that we have a gestalt that is worth that asking price. Of course, he is solid, but I do wish the ratchets could have been added. I know why they weren't. I've spoken to Evan Brooks about why they weren't. But still, one could dream, you know? But all in all, yeah. Don't buy any of these individually. If you aren't committed to going in all the way on Devastator, it is not worth it. But if you want a completed Devastator and you don't mind having slightly subpar figures for the individual bots, or at least, you know, you're fine with shelling out an extra 70 quid on upgrade parts, good god, then it is worth it. Especially when you get some little companion pieces on the go. But yeah, that's been Devastator. I'm pleased. And if you agree that this combiner is worth the price, then maybe leave a like. If not, then leave a comment, tell me what you think of this guy. And be sure to subscribe for the next one. At the time of filming, Age of the Primes Wave 3 is due next week, so catching up on this guy, realized it's the one prime I haven't covered. And if you do want to catch some Macadam talk early, then my Patreon is always an option. We get early access, photo galleries, you name it, the credits, the whole works. Right now though, I think I'm gonna go mess with a certain new age gunformer. That's not gonna be an easy transformation to film without some practice. Anyway, ciao.